Hey guys, all right, we're back with Unit 3, Video 2. Last time we introduced the idea of the social structure, the other side of the machine. So we've got two sides of the machine. One of them is culture, which largely determines or influences our thoughts. The other one is social structure, which largely influences our behavior. So put us into the machine. This is how thoughts and behaviors get produced. All right. So we talked about last time. I didn't do a fantastic job of defining social structure for you, so I'm going to do that right now. It's not a particularly difficult idea, and when you think social structure, think about those boxes and lines. Boxes are statuses, lines are norms, the expected behaviors that determine how one box, one position, interacts with another box, another position, how my behavior is determined toward you based on the fact that I'm a professor and you're a student. And therefore, there are, out of the million ways that we could interact, we interact in a very, very limited set of ways, the norms that govern the relationship between this position, this status, and your position. Okay, social structure, simply a society's system of statuses and norms. Think about that huge organizational flowchart with all those boxes. Social structure can be defined as a society's system of statuses and norms. Statuses, we defined this last time, positions in the social structure. What we're going to do in this lecture now is basically make 3 points. There are two main types of statuses. We're going to discuss both of those. We're going to talk about how we know what status a person is in, which is not particularly difficult. You do it effortlessly all the time. And third, we're going to talk about the problem of what's called a master status. And I'll get there, and it's horrible. We'll get there in a moment. All right, to begin with, two main types of statuses. We've got them right here. One of them is ascribed, and the other one is achieved. Very simply, an ascribed status is one you do nothing to get into. A position in society that you do nothing to get into. For example, I am in the status of man. I didn't do anything. I was just born male. That's an ascribed status. I am in the status of white person. That is unfortunately a position in our society, and there are norms that govern the way people interact with me that are different than the way they would interact with me if I was a person of color. That's not how it's supposed to be, but that's the reality. So those are the idea of ascribed statuses. I'm a middle-aged man. Being middle-aged is an ascribed status. I didn't do anything except not die to get into that status. Okay, those are our ascribed statuses. Next are achieved, and you know exactly what this is going to be. They're statuses that you have to achieve something to get into. Specifically, what we're going to talk about is to get into an achieved status, you need to go through some sort of initiation rite. An initiation rite is just very simply norms required for entrance into a status. So when you think, you as a college student are in a great, it's a quintessential example of an achieved status. So you didn't just get born a college student, you had to do certain things. And crucially, what you had to do was to graduate from high school or get your GED. So those are norms. They're expected behaviors for you to go through in order to get into that achieved status of college student. You can think of high school as an initiation rite that you have to go through to be able to gain entrance into college. But that's not the only initiation, right? You also have to take the SAT or the ACT. You have to go through an application process. All of those are what we would call initiation rites. Norms required for entrance into a status. Initiation rite, norms required for entrance into a status. In order to become a college professor, I had to go through those norms that you had to go through. I also had to graduate from college. That was the first part of the initiation, right? I had to take the GRE, which is basically the SAT for graduate school. I had to then I had to apply to graduate school, so that's another level of the initiation, right? I had to pass my classes. That's, again, we can think of that as an initiation right into becoming a college professor. I had to write a master's thesis. All of those things, I had to take comprehensive exams, so a whole bunch of things like that. Any job you have to go through initiation rites, even if it's just a job interview. So ascribed statuses and achieved statuses. And we can, if you add them up together, actually, hold on one second. So that flowchart that I had up on the board last time of all those different boxes, those are made up of some ascribed statuses and some achieved statuses. I didn't put up there like, and I probably should have, I didn't put up there like man, woman, but those would be ascribed statuses that would be up there. But now we're going to change our focus from the vast array of statuses that exist in a particular society and focus just on me. So we can, if you take let's say there are 10,000 statuses, 10,000 different boxes that I could possibly go into, but I don't go into all of them. I'm never a police officer. I'm never I can't think of another stupid example right now, a governor. Why? I'm never one, though. I'm never one. So out of those 10,000, there are a bunch that I go into. Let's see, I'm a white person. I'm a man. I'm an American citizen. I am a husband. I'm a father. That's 5. I'm a college professor. That's 6. I'm a friend to those people, that's 7. I'm a son, that's 8. And you get that. Like, you could list, and you can do this for yourself as well. That list of all the statuses that you actually inhabit at one point or another during your life is what's referred to as your status set. Status set is just very simply all the statuses that one particular individual, so I have a status set, you have a status set, and our status sets overlap to some degree, right? Like you, I would guess, at some point are driving a car on the road, so you're in the status of driver. I'm in the status of driver sometimes too. So that is what we're talking about. That is what a status set is. Okay, so we've got our first main point, which is there are 2 main types, ascribed statuses and achieved statuses. You focus on the individual, and what you can see is their particular set of those ascribed and achieved statuses. Okay, what we need to go down now to is main point number 2, which is how do you know which status you're in? And this is important because you have to interact with me not based on whatever status you want. You're not going to interact with me based on me being a dad, because I'm not your dad. I'm your professor. So you have to figure out which one you have to interact with me. Now, obviously, this doesn't take a lot of effort. You turned on the computer, you saw my face, and you knew what you were going to be doing. But it does stand to reason that there is some degree of figuring out that has to happen at some point. Like if you see me walking across campus, I'm not just some guy. I'm a college professor, and you may interact with just some guy on campus differently than you would. Sorry, my phone just went off. You may interact with some guy just differently than you would me. If you see some middle-aged guy walking across campus, who knows what that's about? It could be some creepy guy. But the fact that I'm a college professor will determine how you interact with me, as long as you know that I am a college professor. So how do we figure that out? Obviously, you look at me, but what you have to do is determine something about me. There are symbols that I have to communicate to you. And you know what I usually do when I'm not in New Mexico is wear a collared shirt. And that is what we would call a status symbol. Now, you know the term status symbol, but we usually think about it as only oriented toward wealth. The reality is, any symbol, anything that holds meaning that determines what particular status a person is in is a status symbol. So the fact that your professors usually dress slightly differently than the custodians at the school, that is a status symbol. It marks us as having a particular status and therefore gives you information about how you're supposed to interact with us. All right, status symbols. They are things that mark what status a person's in. All right, so we've done two of our big points. We dealt with the two main types of statuses, ascribed and achieved statuses. We dealt with how you know what status a particular person's in, status symbols. All right, now we get to the problem of the master status. And master status, I'm going to erase these. Well, no, I'm actually going to leave. I'm going to erase this. Master status. It does not mean what you probably are going to think it means. And this is important for your exam. I will almost certainly, as an incorrect answer, I will say college professor in a classroom is a master status, because it kind of seems like it would be. In a college classroom, I'm the person who is in control. That's not at all what a master status means. It is, and this is a little bit of a lengthy definition, so pause me if you need to. A master status is a status that is more important than others in how people interact with you. A master status, a status that is more important than others in how people interact with you. Okay, rewind it and listen to the definition again if you need to. Here's the situation. Not everybody has a master status. I don't have one. A master status suggests that even if there is a certain place in the social structure where a person is, other people aren't interacting with them based on that. Instead of, for example, let's say a waitress at a restaurant. A waitress at a restaurant is in a particular place in the social structure, right? They're in a restaurant, and there are a whole bunch of statuses. There are cooks. There are people who are bussing tables. There are waitresses. There are customers, all that stuff. And in an ideal world, what happens is people interact with each other based on those positions. The problem of master status, and probably every single woman who's watching this right now has experienced this at one time or another, the problem is you're in a particular status that has norms that are attached to it, but some guy decides they're going to hit on you anyway. That's not an appropriate thing to happen. That is, the norms of a restaurant don't involve that. The relationship between a customer and a waitress are not about romance. It's about taking orders and serving food. The problem of sexual harassment can be seen sociologically as the problem of a master status. So I am, let's say for this example, I am a woman. I am in the role of waitress. Therefore, or in the status of waitress. Therefore, I should be interacted with based on that status. But instead, it's not that part of my status set that somebody is paying attention to. It is the fact that I have the ascribed status of woman. Another part of my status set, just not the one that is supposed to be appropriate in this situation. Sexual harassment is the behavior of acting with somebody based on a status that's not important or that shouldn't be important in that situation. Now, that's a really benign academic way of describing sexual harassment, and I don't mean to minimize the seriousness of it. But sociologically, we can describe that interaction because, remember, the social structure is about behaviors. The problem in the case of a master status is that the social structure isn't working all that well. Remember, this person is influenced to behave in certain ways. But we also know that the machine is contradictory. The machine tells us that in a situation you're supposed to behave a certain way, but it also has communicated to men in particular that women are to be pursued, and that the situation doesn't necessarily prevent that pursuit from happening. Another example of the problem of a master status is a person of color being treated as a potential criminal in a shop or a store rather than as a customer. So what you have is security guards following that person around or asking them what they're doing rather than the people working in the store just helping them be able to find what they need. The issue here is the status of customer, what is supposed to be governing the behavior of people, isn't. And instead, it's that ascribed status of blackness or brownness or whatever that racial category is that influences how people act. Okay. I think that is all I want to say about master status. So what we've done in this video is we've talked about 3 points related to statuses. We've talked about the fact that they can be divided into kind of 2 broad categories, achieved and ascribed, and that those are different. One of them is earned and one of them isn't. We talked about that we should be able to, by using status symbols, we should be able to identify what the appropriate way of interacting with somebody is in a particular situation. But we also found with the problem of master status, and again, not everyone has a master status. I don't. People interact with me based on the appropriate way of interacting in a particular situation. But some people do, and we talked about particular examples of women and particular examples of people of color, where an ascribed status that shouldn't matter in a situation turns out to matter tremendously. Okay, that is it for statuses. Clunkier video than what I've been doing up to now, but that's going to happen sometimes. Next time we will be back talking about expectations and privileges associated with statuses. So I'll see you then.